You know what would be better than watching this commercial? Watching your commercial. Join the party that is Make Your Day Richer TV by advertising your brand, business, or project during the show. Use us to promote what you're doing to make our viewers' day richer. Scan the QR code or visit makeyourdayricher.com/advertising to start promoting today.
Make your day richer than it was before. Got some good times knocking upon your front door.
Well, fancy meeting you here on our 150th show. Can you believe it? 150 episodes. I mean, yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I know. 150. And we're at 126. There's a lot of numbers today. I feel like I'm on Sesame Street. 126,000 views and downloads of this show. Thank you, everyone who watches and listens every day faithfully. I appreciate it so much. I get to bring you amazing people every day, and I'm so honored to get to do this with you. And so now is a really good time to just share the show while you're there. Share the show. Get us to 127,000. We will be at 140 by the end of the week. Nobody knows anymore around here. It's insanity. Very exciting. Also, congratulations to Brian, Kenneth Swain, and Delilah from last week's episode. They were our #1 most watched episode last week. So thank you very much for them, for all of their hard work in supporting the show and sharing it, and for watching. Oh, what do I have to tell you? I do have this down here. So you're not really going to care about this, but some people, a lot of people who come on this show have podcasts of their own. A lot of people who have podcasts watch this show. And I always think like, okay, how do I, every day when I see the show, I don't watch really the show. I don't watch this part of the show ever, but it replays on Instagram later. So I have to upload it. And it's a whole big thing. So sometimes I hear it, sometimes I see it, I edit because we pre-record some of these interviews. And so I'm editing them, and I realize that the TV screen when I'm talking to someone is really low. And so I'm up here, and then I look like I'm looking down at them, and it was driving me insane. So I finally figured out how to fix that. And a normal viewer will not, I don't think, realize that it's changed. But for me, I feel so much better because now I'm like in line with them, with the people who are not really here. And so that's my tip. If you're a podcaster and you have guests, make sure you're at the right height, at the right level with your guest. So you're not shorter than them. So you're not hovering above them, you look like you're towering over them or whatever. Anyway, I'm very excited about it. And you'll see that on today's show because we figured it out. It's also National Dress Up Your Pet Day. And although my pet is literally in front of this desk right here live, I don't dress her up that much, but I do have a photo from not this past Halloween, but the Halloween before. That is her dressed up as Dorothy in maybe a costume that I have worn as an adult. There's also a photo of that floating out of me as a child dressed as Dorothy, but we put that on her to hand out candy, and she loved/hated it, and everybody in the neighborhood, of course, loved her. So if you have pictures, hashtag National Dress Up Your Pet Day, hashtag Make Your Day Richer, and show us how you dress up your pet, or put it in the comments. All right, we have a really, really great show, and that's really all I have to tell you about my life because I'm very boring. And so let's get to the show, shall we? Ed Hajim is here, who has a great book, a tragic story that has turned into something amazing that he has done with his life. And Brandon Neely is here, so we're going to talk about money and business. Are you ready? Let's do this. Imagine at just 3 years old being ripped away from your mother by your father, told she's gone, and thrust into a life of uncertainty. That's exactly what happened to my first guest. He faced foster homes, orphanages, and a constant struggle for survival. But through it all, he never gave up. He defied the odds, becoming a Wall Street titan and a beacon of philanthropy. Please welcome the author of the book On the Road Less Traveled, An Unlikely Journey from the Orphanage to the Boardroom, the incredible Ed Hajim. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Well, it's good afternoon here, but that's all right.
Yes, depending, and it could be in the middle of the night when people are
Exactly
watching
right.
this. We have no idea. How are you?
I am good. It's a beautiful day down here in Florida.
You wrote a fantastic, open, honest memoir, like I said, On the Road Less Traveled. You were kidnapped by your father at 3 years old.
That's correct.
At 3 years old, do you even know what's happening?
I sure as heck didn't. He told me, I found out later on, he told me basically told my mother not to look for us, and basically told me that she died and I would never see her again. At 3 years old, I'm sure I didn't quite understand that. But, later on, obviously, he continued that same story that she died. And I believed it for, if you have to read the book to find the answer, you did read it. I finally found her after 57 years, but that's a whole other story.
It's a different book. Tell everybody about the book and what they're going to find in the book when they read it.
Well, the book was written for my family, but when I finished it, I sent out 15 requests for blurbs, and 10 of the 15 came back and said, no, you got to share this with the public. It's it has some inspiration in it, and what I came away with is that my life and my book proves, which I want to prove to young people, that anything is possible. And that's really the reason I'm now pursuing this rather different experience in my life. Prior to this part of my life, I avoided all social media. I avoided all press, all magazines. I was basically, to live happy was live hidden. But I've come to the conclusion at this stage of my life, if I can share this with people and help them in the early bumps in their life, especially those in that 16 to 25-year-old when they're making key decisions, that'd be very, very satisfying to me.
What was it like to sit down and kind of rehash all of this again and go through it? And it must have been parts insanely depressing and sad, but also probably therapeutic in some ways.
Both. You have it right on the head, except the fact that when I was 18 years old, I buried the story. I didn't tell anybody. My wife knew maybe 75% of it. My children maybe knew half of it. And so I buried it completely. So according to the psychologist, it turned out to be true. When I tried to bring it back out again, it was almost impossible. In fact, my daughter wrote the first draft of it because I really couldn't handle it. I kept welling up because these experiences kept coming back up. And even when I talked about it for the first, 30, 60 days, I had trouble, repeating some of this stuff. Now that I've been at it for a couple of years, it wears out. But she wrote the first draft. And of course, I had to improve it because, and again, publishing was new to me, but I had to sort of try to contrast the facts with things that I remembered. Basically, my father had saved every letter that I wrote to him, and I'd saved every letter he wrote to me, and all the letters in between foster parents and orphanages and so forth. So I had all that information. I had facts. For example, simple one, I thought I was in 4 foster homes. When I went back and looked at the letters, it was 5 foster homes. And so, but I had trouble writing, and it was difficult, and you're exactly right. I found it extremely difficult. In fact, I used to basically well up, but I also found it intriguing and basically straightened a bunch of things out in my mind. Helped me understand my relationship with my father, understand him better, understand some of my actions better. That was very important to me. Having buried it, I became a new person at 18. I just said, okay, I'm ashamed of my past. I don't want any privileges for what I've lived through, and I really buried it. So I became that other person for almost all my life. Now I had to go back and relive it. It actually helped me quite a bit, and I recommend to people that they do sit and write write your life out and get down to some of the real facts and try to contrast those facts with what you remember. And it's very important to contrast those two things. It was hard. It took me nearly 10 years to write. I have 3 manuscripts, one sitting on my desk. I'm working on it right now, trying for the 3rd book, the Hajim trilogy.
Was there ever a time in that 10 years that you were like, you know what, I can't do this. I'm done writing this book. I'm not doing this anymore.
Absolutely. The first ghostwriter was magnificent, very smart lady. but she wanted me to hate my father. She wanted much more drama than I existed. And I had to, after a year and a half of really hard work, and she did good writing, but she wanted this, she changed the tone of the book. So she and I had to part company, which was very difficult. And I said, maybe this is a venture I shouldn't continue. And what happened, that was the second book. The first book was the Four Ps, because I've been fascinated by fables all my life. They're the unique way of communicating ideas. So I wrote the second book first. But then when I went out, people said, no, you got to write your autobiography first and get that nailed down, then come back with the second book. So in the middle of my autobiography, actually, I felt, as you said, I said, why should I do this? But my wife and my children were very strong on it. Then Horatio Alger came through, and having got that award, I had to really tell the world about myself anyway. So I was felt that fate had said to me, now's the time, and that's why I did it.
Was there, by the time it's finished, are you like, get this out, I don't care, I don't want to work on this anymore? Or was
Oh,
there
no,
still
I would love to write it. I would love to write it. If somebody would let me do it, I'd write a sequel to it, because in many respects it wasn't finished. There were different parts of it which I either glossed over or didn't give it the right amount of detail and so forth. A life is it's very, and of course I learned about things as I read it myself. I read what I wrote, and I said, that's not quite, not quite it. I didn't quite get it. So some of the people that I met throughout my lifetime weren't truly expressed the way they should have been. But I wanted to keep it to under 300 pages because I wanted to be readable. I felt that was very important. But I wanted to bring up, that's why the third book, if I get it done, I'm going to extract from it, 30 lessons or 25 lessons and give examples of those lessons. And maybe that'll be a communication device which will help me further help people get over the bumps or make earlier decisions. My whole concept is that people don't spend enough time on themselves in that critical period, either between 17 and 25 or when they're in transition. One should go back and look at their passions, their principles, their partners, and write down plans physically. And also look at the four parts of life: self, family, work, and community, which community means giving back. People don't realize that no such thing as balance. The best you can achieve is a harmony between those four parts of your life. So that's my goal, my mission, my crusade at this point in time. And I guess that's what people at my age do, if they can do it at all.
Do you think that most people don't do that until they are older? Or how do you feel about that?
Well, some people don't do it. Some people feel they're uncomfortable in bringing those things back up. Some people's backgrounds are not worth writing down. But I have read books with people in their 40s. There's a young woman in Nantucket who was searched for her mother for 30 years, and she wrote a book. She's only in her 60s and so forth. So it's a point in time that comes to you and say, now's the time to write it. I mean, of course, mine was, when life was basically, I've completed all of the four parts of life, basically. I'm in as Levinson wrote about the stages of man life. I'm beyond his stages of man life now. I've completed them all. We sold about 20,000 copies, which I don't know whether that's a lot or a little, but my publisher says it's a lot, so I'll go along with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than 10, so why not? I think anything should be celebrated, even if you sold 6. I want to talk about the publishing process a little bit and what you were maybe surprised by, how that works, and the way you went about it.
Well, it's a much more difficult process. Having an idea or trying to observe something in your life, and then actually writing it down and saying, this is what I want to tell people. Then when the person reads that, is he getting the message that you're trying to give them? And that's really a unique situation. I was a chemical engineer, spent my life on Wall Street writing, bullet points and so forth. Having to do this, I had 3 or 4 ghostwriters before I got it done. And it was a very difficult experience as far as I'm concerned. Then, I was going to self-publish, but some publisher came along and said he would like to do it. Great guy, Tony Lyons. Of course, I had, being a Wall Street person, I didn't know anything about publishing, but I realized the publisher doesn't do anything except publish. You have to hire a publicist, and she has been terrific in getting me people to contact people like yourself and so forth. And by the way, these experiences have been great for me because people like you ask questions that further increases my knowledge of myself and the process I'm going through. But the publicist has done quite a bit for me. And we now have evolved this thing into a course. I believe what you do is you go down a path, you do something, and then you take a turn in the road. I'm going to try to write the third book, but I'm also now produced a template for a course, because I believe that in many respects, there are two kinds of education. One teaches you how to make a living, and our schools do a decent job of that. The second part of it, second education, basically teaching how to make a life. And they do a very poor job of that formally. It's done informally in the dining room and the dormitory and so forth, and maybe not at all. But I want the freshman or the senior in high school to spend some time thinking about who he or she is, and where they want to go, how they expect to get there, and maybe if they're very incisive, why they want to go where they're going. So I want that done, and I've got 5 beta sites now that are working on, one of which has 115 students, and was sold out this year. So I'm very excited about that. I'm presumptuously, if you'll pardon me, I'd like to add a dimension to college education, which is basically the job is not only to educate the person in terms of making a living, but educate the young students in how to make a life.
What did you want to be when you were a kid, when you grew up?
I wanted to make a living. I was poor. I spent actually too much of my life trying to make money. I actually turned somewhere around mid-40s. I said, I've made enough. Just enough is one of my concepts, and I decided to do what I really wanted to do. But I spent a lot of time early on, seeking out how to make money. But I wanted to be an engineer at first. I really enjoyed science. And that's why I tell people to test this. I was a whiz in high school. I think my lowest grade was like 93 on the New York State Regents, and that was in solid geometry, which people don't take. And I went to college, and I was going to be an engineer rather than a scientist because you could get a job. But in my sophomore year, I decided I really want to be a physicist. And this is one of my theories: is that word physicist is just a word. You go into the class taking advanced physics in your sophomore year, you find out the people that take physics are not your people, not bad people, but they focus on different things. They seem to be a little smarter than I was, but also they concentrated on their subject more than I did. I was a little more interested in people and systems, and so I found out physics wasn't for me. But you can only do that by testing it. And that's one of my theories with young people is you put monikers on things like physicist or investment banker. I can go into that, and an analyst. Go try those things out, because it really is what you do Monday morning that really counts, not what they call it. So I think that's very important. So I wanted to be a scientist. I loved the idea. I couldn't wait to get the new chemistry book. But as I got older, I found out there were other greater passions. That's why I say find your passion. Your passions they evolve, they morph. And in my junior year of college, they morphed into something that I didn't realize until later on. But I love putting people together. My junior year, I put 30 people together to produce a magazine called the Humor Magazine, which everybody was against, the president, the provost, the librarian, everybody. But I was determined to do it. And I felt that Rochester was a place where fun went to die, and I was going to have a little humor here. And so I produced this magazine, and it taught me an enormous amount about myself, which I didn't recognize till later on, because there was a further passion. I really got a kick out of helping people do better than they thought they could. And that's what I call a deeper, passion. And when you find that passion, and it actually fits in with something called management, and you find that by using that passion, you become a reasonably good manager, then you all of a sudden are tying together your passions and making a living. You have to stop me sometimes. I ramble on a bit.
Listen, this would be a very boring talk show if no one talked. I was gonna ask what you love most about your life right now.
Much more freedom. I can do pretty much anything I want to do. And I love the fact that I've got a crusade now that really is very satisfying. I think you start off on my 4 parts of life. You start off on yourself. You work hard on your family and work in your midlife. And then you get a chance at what I call community giving back. I can really give back now. I mean, I can really spend time in the charitable operations. I have 2 crusades. One is this. I want to add that dimension to college education. The only problem is that one of my favorite things is golf, and my shoulder's now gone. The good Lord has sent me a message that I should be concentrating on these 2 crusades, not playing so much golf. So
golf takes a lot of time. So
no, it does. I'm going to take those 4 hours every Saturday and work on my book and work on this, where I would be out there 4 or 5 hours on the course. And played enough golf.
Well, I hope you come back and I hope you keep us updated on all the things you're doing. I love that you're just using all of your passions. I think that's so important. People have passions that they either sweep aside and don't really embrace, and it can be so life changing. So I appreciate you being here.
Well, I think you have to keep track of those passions. And one of my courses, they're forcing the young people to basically do 3 life scenarios. And that'll force some of those hidden passions out, the ones that come out later on. And they do morph. I mean, your passions morph over time. And you'll find that some, like that passion I had for science, faded, and another one took its place. Right now, I've a totally different passion than I had when I was younger. I would never be this interested in these ideas and concepts and so forth. But anyway, it's been a wonderful ride, and it seems like it's just getting started. We're approaching 5 more institutions. They all seem to be excited about it, and it seems like the right time. I believe that there's never been more opportunity or more complexity, and that's what's happening to our young people. And I think having them spend time on themselves, recognizing they are unique, will help some of the problems we have with the effect of social media and other influences.
Yeah, I agree. What's the best way that people can connect with you and follow you and support you?
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, they've got me on Instagram. I'm very robust on Instagram now.
Well, I'm grateful you're doing the work you're doing. I'm grateful you came today to hang out with me. I appreciate it so much.
Well, good. Thank you for having me. Come on, this is a
Yes.
mutual experience.
Well, you come back anytime you want. This is Ed Hajim, everyone. Go to his website, edhajim.com. Get his memoir, On the Road Less Traveled. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a great day. As they
You
say,
too.
may the force be with you.
Yeah, we'll be right back with Brandon Neely, who's the host of the Wealth Wisdom podcast. We'll be right back.
You know what would be better than watching this commercial? Watching your commercial. Scan the QR code or visit makeyourdayricher.com/advertising to start promoting today.
Welcome back, everyone. We all have dreams of pursuing our passions, right? But what happens when that dream starts to turn into a financial nightmare? That's the situation my next guest found himself in. He and his wife poured their hearts and souls into their dream business, only to find themselves teetering on the edge of financial ruin. But they didn't give up. They discovered a path to financial stability, and now they're helping others do the same. Please welcome financial expert and co-host of the Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast, Brandon Neely. Yes, get your Brandon Neely is here, and he is putting on his podcast host / guest voice, and he's ready to go. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm glad to be here.
Or afternoon. People watch this at all times. So good afternoon, good morning. It could be 3 a.m. We don't even know. It could be the middle of the night. Nobody knows. Okay, so I want to first mention that you have a really, really good podcast called the Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast. But I want to go back because you used to have my dream life and you used to own a coffee shop. And so I would like to start there.
Would that be a dream life or a nightmare, depending?
Well,
right?
It's probably because I've never had one, so I think it's a dream, right?
Yeah. That's what people say. They come to me and they're like, "Can I just pick your brain?" Whenever I was having the shop,
Mm-hmm.
and then you tell them how much you work and how little you get paid, and they realize and they then decide not to be coffee shop owners.
Yeah.
It is very much capital intensive, and then the what do you call it? Income that you get from that is not very much, right?
Uh-huh.
So, from a business model, there's a book called Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco, I believe his name is, and he says a couple times, if you want to be rich, don't start a coffee shop. In the book, I was like, man, I wish I would have read that
Oops.
prior.
Why a coffee shop? Were you a coffee lover? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I think we love coffee. Ethical economics was one thing, and community building. So I was thinking about Cheers. I'm from Louisiana, so I wanted to create a community space, right? And so that was the reasoning for it. However, that was our purpose, right? We wanted to change the world. That was the big thing. we just didn't realize our business name was Overflow. We learned that we needed to make sure we take care of us. And in business, oftentimes, as business owners in general, we take care of everybody else and not us. And I think that's needs to be switched. And it was definitely our situation when we had the coffee shop. And what I learned was we could do this pain to ourselves, like not pay ourselves, doing all the things. But when you start having children, you can't feed them ramen all day long, right? It's just not possible or healthy. And I would probably go into jail for that kind of thing. So we sold the business after a while because we're like, all right, we have a child coming. We need to make some changes.
From like a business owner standpoint, how long did it take you? Because I'm just curious, like from that decision of like, okay, this isn't sustainable to we're closed.
So we never closed it. We sold it, and we were able to sell it to somebody who could sustain it longer and had deeper pockets. And I think that's important to know yourself. The other thing I learned was it takes a couple years before you even are in revenue mode. So when you start a business, such as a brick and mortar coffee shop, well, no one's going to give you money because you have no revenue. But it takes revenue to do a build out, probably a lot of revenue, right? Lots of money, and people want to get paid for the espresso machine and the, I don't know, cabinets and all that stuff. So we learned how to streamline it because we had no rich relatives. It's not like I came into this world with family members that were super rich. And so that's something we learned. We were bootstrapping like crazy to get this going.
So where did the idea for the podcast come about? It's called the Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast. Where did that come from?
Doing the coffee shop, we are now in the financial services space, which I never thought I would be doing this. Never thought I'd be in the life insurance world, of all things. We just knew that this concept, the infinite banking concept, made a difference for us. We are educators by heart, so having a podcast was a big reason as to why we did it. We love to teach. My wife is a 5 on the Enneagram, if you know that
Mhm.
personality thing. So she likes to gather information. But the way to make her healthy in that world is to get it out there. Now, growing a YouTube channel, podcast channel, that's a different story as a educator, because a lot of times people would rather watch train wrecks than educate themselves. So that's a hard
Mhm.
thing. But it was learning that people like Dave Ramsey may be teaching things that aren't accurate or right, or it depends, right? And so we wanted to help educate people and keep growing ourselves.
And you co-host it with your wife, which is fun.
Hmm. Yeah,
When do episodes come out? And I'm assuming it's available on all the usual platforms.
it better be. Every
Okay.
Wednesday we drop something, and we have it on YouTube. The reason we did YouTube at one point was because, as you know, there was this thing called COVID that happened,
Mhm.
and people moved from not listening to podcasts because they aren't going to the gym anymore. And so then videos went up, and so we did YouTube. But we love educating and helping people think, and that's the hardest and most limiting thing is most people consume, but they don't know how to think. And so that's what our hope in our podcast and YouTube is, that we help you, the listener, think, because it's your life, right? Not ours, right?
Yeah. So you've obviously been doing the podcast for a while. What do you love about it? What have you learned about that world?
Well, as you know, you've been doing this a long time. Now everybody and their mother is a podcaster. And I think like in 2017, we didn't realize how cutting edge it was, right? We were just like, oh, let's do this thing called a podcast, and no one knew what it was. Now everybody has one. And so what I've learned is being on the right shows, doing the right things, but also how do I best communicate that to others? And from a sales side, people may come into my sphere, and listening to me speak may help them get across the finish line, because
Mhm.
Also, I'm educating along the way. And another thing is that happens is people will come back to me and say, "Hey, I remember the story," and I'm like, "What? I don't even remember that story."
It happens
And
to me
how
every
did
day.
you? Yeah, how do you know that? I don't remember saying that to anybody, but I did just a long time ago, and my memory's short.
I want to go back to business a little bit. If you can offer some, because with the new year, I think a lot of people are like, "This is the year I'm going to start." That's how I did mine. Was like, "Hey, beginning of the year, get my LLC." What's some advice that you can give for people who are looking to start a business?
Well, I just did a blog on that. Three things I tell people: know that you know that you know that you're called to it, because it will be hard. And if you are
Mhm.
just a entrepreneur, not a real entrepreneur, business owner, you will give up. Same with podcasts. Do you know how many people start a podcast and it's 12 episodes or less
Yeah.
than, and they were like, "Oh, this is harder than I thought,"
Yeah.
because they didn't think past 6 episodes, right? So you got to know that you know that you know that you know that you're called to it, and then put it all on the line for at least 5 years. That's what I did on the coffee shop, and I gave myself, there's no going backwards. That's why I waited until 6 or 7 years before I sold it. The second one is have a team around you that care about you, not just what you create, but you as an individual.
Mm.
Because being in married, your customers are just going to say, "Well, yeah, but can you do this? Can you do that?" And people that actually care for you is important, right?
Yeah,
To
because
make
you can
them
get
feel
so
cared about.
wrapped up into it. Yeah.
And then my third is know your numbers. Why are you doing it? So from a podcast, and I'm a financial guy, so know your financial numbers, cost benefit, and then knowing metrics of listeners, how to increase that, how to grow that. How, is it helping? Does it resonate? Sometimes you have to create content that you like, not just clickbaity stuff. But I think those three things, whether it's a podcast or a brick and mortar business, those three things matter. Any business for that matter.
You have something called the still method that I want to
Yep.
talk about as well, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, my wife and I wrote this book. It's called Five Smooth Stones. So, my this is probably the wrong way to write a book, because we didn't write it with a pain point. We wrote it because we wanted to write it, and we wrote it because for my son who's 6, and I was like, if we were going to write something, what would we write for him? That's kind of how our
Mm.
content is too. And so, Five Smooth Stones is a money journal. It's a thinking book, which is, again, we love to consume. We don't love to think. So what this is there's a passage in the Bible, and it's about David and Goliath. Even if you're not a church person, you know David and Goliath, right? God gave David 5 stones to beat his Goliath. I believe we have a Goliath, and when it's business, when it's our life, finances, and our Goliath is chaos, confusion, haphazard, anxious, overwhelming, and stressful. So the reason I created this book was we do financial analysis all day long, and maybe the tactic or the tool is a policy, life insurance policy, right? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's something else. Maybe they just need to save. Maybe they need to stop spending like drunken sailors. I don't know. But what they need to do is move from chaos to clarity, and we call it the still method, which is, of course, we love acronyms. It's set your sights, track your in and out, inspect your progress, look for 1% adjustments, and live deliberately. I talk to people all the time, married couples, and I ask, "What's your dreams and goals?" And they're like, "That's a great question." I'm like, "That is not, I mean, okay, it's a great question, but you're 70.
Mm.
Shouldn't you have figured that out by now?" And they don't talk to each other. So setting your sights, where do you want to be? What kind of podcast do you want? Like, all those kind of things. Tracking, inspecting, looking, and living deliberately. This is not always about money. You could use it for finances, but it's, do I want to have a healthy marriage? Do I want to have, I don't know, my kids like me? So set your sights, track. Do we actually hang out? Those kind of things. So that's our STILL method and a framework. Pretty easy. And it's a journal. It's a workbook. It is a thinking book, which is again why we created it. Was for it to be a interactive, right, with pen and paper. And my wife made it with leather, vegan leather, and then there's a lot of tools and educational pieces like from the podcast. I don't know if you can see that, but the cost of convenience is one of them.
That's so smart. I love that idea. I'm so glad that's out. What a great resource.
Yeah.
What do you love most about your life right now?
Man, I have a 6-year-old, so that's really fun. And one of my goals is I want my son to visit 6 of the 7 continents before he's 18. I've been trying to figure out what is my hobby, right? What hobby do I want? So what I'm most excited, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to move this over. Can you see this?
Yeah.
I've been building all these Legos.
Oh yeah.
Different Legos and things like that. I'm building memories with my 6-year-old, so we build those things, and they are quite expensive. These Lego sets, but I was like, hey, well, I can spend it on something that's fun and he likes, and so there's Papa Legos, and then there's his Legos. So anyway, that's my most exciting thing. I also love like what we do with our clients, helping business owners, just doing what we do. It's fun.
What is the best way that people can connect with you and follow you?
Yeah, if you go to wealthwisdomfp.com, you can get a report, wealthwisdomfp.com/report, and there's a special report, 5 simple steps to secure your future outside of a W-2. That's something we created about the infinite banking concept. And then if you look us up, Wealth Wisdom Financial, I better be everywhere. I should be everywhere. And if I'm not, if you don't find me and you looked me up on Instagram, all the places, Facebook, follow us, like us, subscribe, write a review, all the fun stuff.
I thank you so much for being here. I love the resources that you're giving people or offering people, because it's so needed. And it's hard to, there are places where like, even in podcasting, like you can go here and you have to go here and go to this thing, and you've put it kind of all in one space, which is so helpful.
Yep. I think, again, the biggest thing I want to encourage your listeners is to be the master of your own ship. Think for yourself. Don't just delegate it to a financial advisor or financial professional like me. I'm a safe money guy, but you have to create your own future and destiny. Don't think that a president or the next cycle will help you. You have to think for yourself and build the world and life you want.
Brandon Neely, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. It's fun.
Come back anytime. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back after this.
You know what would be better than watching this commercial? Watching your commercial. Scan the QR code or visit makeyourdayricher.com/advertising to start promoting today.
That's our show. Thanks for watching and listening. That was also a great time. Press that share button. Get us to our next milestone. On tomorrow's show, we have a great show. Singer, songwriter, author of Portraits of White, Hope and Inspiration for Those Who Struggle with the Holidays, Frances Strost is here. We recorded this interview. You have to watch tomorrow. She is fantastic, hilarious, and there's talk about diarrhea, so why not tune in? And Tosh Doherty is here. She has a book called These Perfectly Careless Things, which is a great young adult book that y'all should be reading. Have a great day, everybody. Go make your day richer. Go make someone else's day richer. You've made mine by watching the show, and I love you for it. We'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Bye-bye.